Well, we will go ahead and get started. For those of you who I have not had the chance to meet, my name is Mrs. Beckett, and I am the Director of Alumni Relations at Academy. And I am so thrilled that you decided to join us this evening for our Careers in STEM panel. I am just going to share a couple of expectations, and then I'm going to turn it over to Sue Lynn, who is going to serve as our moderator this evening. So if you are not talking, and that should basically be all of our participants, if you'd please make sure that you're on mute, just so there isn't any background noise, that would be great. If you have a question, please feel free to submit it through the chat. The chat is set up so those questions will just come to me, and I am happy to interrupt our panelists at any point in time to ask your question. And I know they'd love to hear from you, and I know that they want to talk about the things that are most interesting to you. So please, please, please do send those questions. And then I know that everyone has a lot to do. So we are going to have a hard stop at 7:30. So if there's a great conversation going, or if there was a question that you really wanted answered and we didn't have the time to do so, I will make sure that the panelists get that question and that they get back to you. So that's enough of me talking. I'm going to go ahead and mute myself and turn it over to Sue Lynn.
All right, hello, I'm Sue Lynn, and I'm just going to ask the panelists to introduce themselves. So, Stephanie, would you like to introduce yourself first?
Yeah, sure. My name's Stephanie Brownstein. I graduated from CA in 2005 as a lifer. Currently working as an environmental engineer in a branch that's called the Illinois Sustainable Technology Center. It's a part of the University of Illinois. I guess quick overview of trying to summarize what I do. You have researchers that working on projects at a small scale, and I help try to bridge that gap to industry and make them large scale implementations for environmental sustainability technologies.
Thank you. Kathleen, would you like to go next?
Sure. So hi, I'm Kathleen. I graduated from Columbus Academy in 2011. And what do I do? So I work for Visa. They process most of the world's transactions, so credit cards, debit cards, prepaid cards. And so in my work, I do all sorts of cool things with that transaction data to help answer strategy questions for banks who issue Visa credit cards or for merchants who accept those cards.
Thank you. And Katerina, would you like to go?
Sure, yeah. So I'm Katarina Weikert. I graduated from Academy in 2014. So Kathleen and I actually go back to CA soccer days. You were a senior, right, when I was a freshman? Yeah, yes, I think so. Yeah, and so I currently am in Boston. I work for Rockwell Automation, where I'm a senior commercial engineer. And so that's pretty much just bridging the gap between sort of like software development. Rockwell pretty much invented controls, which are the computers in machines that are sort of the brain of the machines. They're in everything from like manufacturing lines to roller coasters, right? And so as a commercial engineer, I do a lot of the augmented reality, virtual reality, and Internet of Things development for demos in some of the conferences and events that Rockwell holds each year.
Awesome, thank you. So now I'm just going to ask some questions. Where did you go for your post-academy degrees, and did you feel that Academy did a good job preparing you for academic success? And anyone can jump in and grab this question at any time.
Definitely go for it.
Yeah, keep the same order. So after Academy, went to Cornell University for undergrad, as well as I stayed to get my master's, both in chemical engineering and a minor in engineering management. So yeah, no, I feel Academy did a great job preparing me for that, especially the rigor of the academics, and then transitioning into college went pretty smoothly.
So I went to WashU in St. Louis for my undergrad. There I studied math and did a statistics concentration, and my AP stats course that I think my year was the first year we had it definitely prepared me well for that. And then a few years after I graduated, I went back again to Cornell. We're going to have a theme tonight.
Yeah.
And did a master's degree in operations research and information engineering. And I definitely think I got a good kind of base knowledge at Academy, both specifically in kind of the math and science classes, but also just good study habits and learning how to learn.
And then, to top it off, I also attended Cornell University, and I attended for my undergraduate degree in operations research and information engineering, funny enough, which is like a pretty small major at Cornell. So it's kind of funny we have two here tonight. But yeah, and I guess maybe for me, I didn't have quite as smooth of a transition into college my freshman year. I definitely thought the academic rigor hit me by surprise, especially my first semester. I think by second semester, I sort of got my feet under me a little more. But that being said, Academy, and how I was pretty much able to get my feet under me, I guess, was because Academy really teaches you to like reach out to your professors if something's not going well, your teachers in high school, and sort of like Academy was a place where I was academically challenged, so I was comfortable with the uncomfortable of the class that I was pursuing in college. So yeah, it did a good job, and also just like analytical problem solving skills and things like that really transfer to any engineering degree. I think Academy did a super good job of establishing a foundation there.
All right. So how much did your major impact your post-career college choices?
I think for me, it was a major impact. I found that chemical engineering, between myself and my peers upon, graduating, can go into a large variety of fields. I've seen, oil refinery, biomedical, food research. I think Chemie is one of the more diverse majors within engineering. So I think that opens the door to being able to look at a lot of different career paths. Started out in manufacturing and then now transitioned to a more research academic scope.
So I definitely think what I studied impacted my career choices. So in undergrad, I studied math and I did a statistics focus, but I also did a minor in political science. And that definitely impacted my first job, which was kind of doing economic analysis of tax policy. So a lot of statistics, a lot of policy involved there. And then my grad degree, I kind of went to the degree hoping to get a data science job afterwards. So I specifically took a lot of classes that would kind of directly relate to my job, and they've definitely been very useful, and I use a lot of those skills all the time.
Yeah, definitely. And I think to reiterate what Kathleen is saying, so operations research and information science, for those not familiar, I know I wasn't going in, it's very much like a blend, right? So you have this business process optimization, like very stats oriented, heavy math, and then also kind of like this computer science element too, right? And so you can go a lot of different directions. And so I kind of peeled off on the third lane there. So I went more in the software engineering direction. And yeah, so I think it does have a big impact, like what your major was. And I think that for me, I'm in digital transformation right now, which is quite the intersection of how digital technologies can help optimize and like produce more efficient results for organizations, right? And so that's like a direct blend of all three of those segments of my major. And I think in general, a lot of my friends from college who were in engineering sort of stuck with their engineering major in their first job, right? And then I think you can branch off after that. But when you're studying something technical, like you're going to need the skills in the background to apply that technical topic into your professional world, right? But I think that for most other majors, I would say people were all over the map in terms of what their major was and where they ended up.
One thing I would add on to that though, so it's probably more like a data science specific thing, but there are a lot of fields that do data analysis. And so there's a bunch of different majors you could choose where you would learn similar enough skill sets for it to be relevant. Like you could study computer science and be a good data scientist. You could study statistics. You could study any type of engineering, really. Even like a lot of psychology uses a lot of statistics and data analysis. And so there's kind of a lot of ways to get at the same thing. And I definitely think my classes really prepared me well, but you don't have to study operations research to do data science. You could study a whole bunch of different fields and still be good.
Definitely agree with that.
All right. So
I have a question.
Yes.
From our participants. And so the question is, what class or classes did you take in high school that you found useful to your major in college?
I think for me, it was AP Chem and Honors Chem were the big ones. I also enjoyed like the AP and Advanced Bio, but I think those chemistry classes for Dr. Heel, if anyone who would know who he is, were a big influencer for preparing me for chemical engineering.
I mean, I studied math, which is kind of just a direct continuation of what you learn in high school. So it definitely influenced it. Probably just, this math, the calculus class, the statistics class, all those you kind of just keep on going in college, doing more and more stuff, but it was pretty directly related to kind of all my math coursework.
Yeah, I would also agree. I would echo the AP stats was definitely helpful. Definitely, I don't know if Mr. Alexio is still on the line, but AP Calc, that definitely came in handy in college. Yeah, I think actually I didn't take AP Chem, and that probably contributed to some of my woes first semester freshman year.
Did you take Orgo that first year?
I forget, it was like whatever the chem class I had to take, and I was like, it was tough.
All right. How did you get into your current role, and how did Academy help you get there?
So let me give a little background. I've only been in my current role for a little under 2 years. Before that, right out of college, I started with Kraft, or what's now Kraft Heinz. Mac and cheese, ketchup, all that good stuff. They have a manufacturing plant here. And so we use Rockwell Automation, ties together. And there I was doing environmental engineering and safety management for the facility. Again, working in industry, kind of got to a point where I wanted to change it up. And long story short, I played indoor soccer, and our goalie is now my boss at the university. So I think in my mind, that's a great story of, you never know what can happen. Building connections and learning how to talk to people and tell a story is huge. I mean, even something like the junior speeches, and building confidence and telling a story, I think really helps prepare you for something like that can happen. Yeah, it was just a crazy coincidence and perfect timing.
So I think, how did I get this current job? I kind of just applied during grad school to a bunch of different companies, and this was the one that kind of worked out and I was most excited about. But I think one of the big things that helped me, that Academy helped me with, was I feel like Academy really focuses on people being well-rounded and, like try playing a sport, try doing something in the arts, try all sorts of different things. And in data science, that's really valuable. A lot of people who work in data science are really good at numbers and making really like complex or detailed models. But if you can't communicate the results of your analysis or what you did or why you did, it doesn't really matter. And so having like the more well-rounded background and being able to communicate like what all I was working on was really helpful in kind of both the interview process and also being successful in my role right now.
Yeah, no, those are all good points. I think that I just don't know who was on the phone when I was telling Mr. Alexio, but I just started a new job about 2 months ago almost now. So I'm brand new at my current role. And I wasn't actually looking for a job. So I got reached out to on LinkedIn. So one, I think that's a good point. Make sure your LinkedIn, like if I don't know, people probably all have LinkedIn's out in high school. I don't think I did though, which was not good. But yeah, and so I just got reached out by a recruiter at Rockwell Automation, and my LinkedIn was up to date. I'm on LinkedIn a lot, just looking at like what's out there and whatnot, and I update my profile. So yeah, that's how I got the job. And I think that in general, like, since I hadn't been looking for a job, I didn't have my resume up to date or anything like that, which I needed to obviously present to the recruiters during my interview process. And I actually had some of my Columbus Academy like friends look at my resume, help me update it, things like that. I still keep in contact with my Academy network, and that's been proven to be so valuable because it's like your friends are your friends, and you trust them and you trust their opinions, and they're interesting people, and they're all kind of doing different things with their career as you part ways after Academy, right? And so I think that having that perspective of all these different industries, for example, I think I reached out to 2 people from Academy, one in business management consulting and one in data science. And so it's like I get really great perspective from other successful people that I trust their opinion. So I think that's also another takeaway.
So what is something that would surprise people about the work that you do?
I think something in my current role, again, this whole branch that I work in is tackling environmental sustainability issues. And I think when I started, something that took me by surprise is how many different topics you can delve into in a lot of detail to try to make an impact in your little niche and like your little corner. I mean, we have people that are trying to figure out how to recycle solar panels now that a lot of the ones that have been implemented are going to reach the end of their life. What do you do with those? Microplastics in water. All right, things you can't see, but we might be drinking, and how do we correct that and validate if they're harmful or not? So I just thought it was surprising to just know the breadth of all things that are out there, and if you choose a specific slice that you want to delve into, that there is most likely an opportunity out there for it.
So data science is one of the, like hot jobs. Everyone's excited about it, wants to be a data scientist right now. And there are some really cool aspects like, building interesting models and getting to kind of do really technical things. But something that is probably surprising is just how much time is spent on getting your data ready to use. So it's not that exciting. It's not that fun, but it's really important because if you don't have good quality data, your output is gonna not be very useful or like relevant. And so a lot of the time is spent on like, okay, what data are we gonna use? What like pulling the data, which if you don't have good data systems can take a while, and getting all the variables ready and kind of a lot of the prep work. And so when you end up building a machine learning model, it ends up being kind of the last little step of the process instead of being the majority of the time, which is probably what I would have expected most people would expect when you think about what a data scientist might do every day. It's still fun though. just.
That is actually interesting, Kathleen, because I feel like you, with like it's machine learning, artificial intelligence, it's like the glitz and glam of data scientists, but it is kind of a small piece of the puzzle. But yeah, I guess for me, so I work in this like XR spectrum, right? So virtual reality, augmented reality, specifically in the enterprise space, which is a very new emerging technology, right? And the rules are changing every single day as far as, okay, what this new wearable came out. So now we have this new headset that has this sensor, so we can develop software according to that new hardware or vice versa. And so I think what's most surprising to me is just that, like, you can start a project. So like I've started so many projects for customers, so paying customers who have this request, and like the majority of the project is just spent figuring out if it's even feasible. And so that's kind of funny because in my head in high school, at least, I definitely was like, oh, well, when I graduate from college, I'll know all the answers and I'll be able to just, like do my job. But my job is really a lot about figuring out what to do, and if something works or if it doesn't work, and trying and failing and then succeeding, hopefully. And so I guess from that perspective, one takeaway I would say is like being okay with like not knowing the answer and still pursuing something and hoping it works. And that's something that I kind of had to grow into, because I was used to being like, I want the answer. What is the answer? If I got it wrong, I want to know what it is. And when you work in emerging technology, you're dealing with an inherently tricky a lot of moving parts, I guess. So yeah, that's what I would say is the most surprising for me.
So what are some of the biggest challenges you are facing or have faced in your current work role? And what are some struggles that you anticipate in the next year, 5 years, 25 years?
Yeah, so most of the projects that I'm working on now are actually around CO2 carbon capture at power plants, and then also sequestering that carbon underground. And so imagine I kind of am working on helping people. They've done all these things at a lab scale or a small scale, and then trying to grow it into industry, attach this pilot plant in a real world scenario at a place where they're burning coal or natural gas. And a lot of what I have to do as well is environmental permitting, right? Environmental Protection Agency, all of these, not barriers, but requirements in order to, do these projects. And because it's so new, it goes back to not knowing all the answers when you're doing new things. I think the biggest challenge for me has just been, having to partner with the appropriate agencies and kind of figure out the best way to put a square peg into a round hole, right? Like, how do we adapt this to work for our pilot project, because it's the first time that we're doing anything like it. I'd say for carbon capture in particular, in the next 5-10 years, I mean, it's only going to get bigger and become more and more important when you start talking about global warming and trying to redact that. So it's kind of on the cusp now of being implemented, even in trial testing phases at these power plants. And at some point, it's going to become more streamlined, turnkey, potentially requirements for places that are burning fossil fuels.
Let's see. I think the biggest challenge in my job field is mainly that it's just changing so quickly, and there's always new technologies being developed and new techniques. And so even right after I graduated grad school, like 3 months later, there was already something new that I didn't know yet, and I had to learn. And so it's kind of a cool challenge, because then you're always learning something new, and you never kind of get bored because you can always do something a little bit different or a little more interesting, but it's something you have to kind of mentally prepare yourself for. Like, oh, I just can never really leave the student mentality totally. You got to keep being willing to learn new things. And even if it's hard, keep pushing forward. So kind of related to that, I mean, the whole industry is just getting more and more technical and developing a bunch. And so I think in the next 5, 10, however many years, I think everyone's just going to get more technical and have more skills. And so the things that a data scientist in my job does today is going to be different than someone who does the same job in 10 years. They're probably going to be doing something like way more technical than I have no idea how to do right now. And so it's just something that it's kind of cool to always be learning new things, but you have to be aware of it and push yourself. Otherwise, you're going to end up not knowing enough.
Definitely. And to be honest, I think I'm just going to echo both what Stephanie and Kathleen said. I think it's challenging to work with the unknown, right? And so to have a growth mindset, a constantly learning mindset, and being okay with not knowing the outcome at the start line. I think that would be probably the biggest challenge. And I think that just in general, like in the field that's not going to go away anytime soon, right? And so I think that for me in AR and VR, I think that it's really going to go to the consumer side, right? So like today, I don't know, people have like Apple Watches, right? I think that people are going to start to like wear around augmented reality or virtual reality glasses. And that's going to open up a whole nother set of challenges about how people interact with one another while also interacting with the digital and physical worlds simultaneously. And so yeah, it's how you look at it. It's going to be a huge challenge, but also hugely exciting because you're opening up a whole new world.
What constitutes success for you, and what do you love most about what you do?
I think success for me kind of falls under two realms. One is feeling like I'm always growing in what I'm doing. You're just taking pride, I guess, in that growth and improvement. And then secondary, I guess, feeling like what I'm doing is making an impact, which in my little slice is, environmental sustainability. So if I can kind of check both of those boxes, I feel like I've, had a successful day. In terms of what I love most about what I do, I love that I'm constantly being challenged and getting to work with a bunch of brilliant people who have similar goals and definitions of success that I do.
So I'm definitely going to copy your always growing and those kind of definitions of success, because I agree, like I always want to be getting better and pushing myself. I also would define success in two other ways. One is that I'm using kind of the skills that make me the best that I can be. Because you can be good at a number of things, but if it's something that's like kind of special to you, then it's kind of good to use those skills. It's a little bit more fulfilling. And then the second one is success is finding a career where it doesn't kind of consume your life. There are some people who want to work to live, some people who live to work, and both are okay. But for me, I'm most happy if my job is not my entire life. And so having a career where I can have time to do things outside of work is really valuable for me too. What I do love about my job, one, it has really good work-life balance. So I have plenty of time to do whatever I want, although during COVID, can't do quite as many things. But I do have lots of time. And I also love, we just work on one of the coolest data sets in the world, I think, because you're seeing what people are buying. You don't see, in case you're worried about data privacy, we don't see people's names. we don't see what you actually buy in your cart. We just see you spent like $30 at Amazon. But it's a pretty awesome data set because it actually is people's actual actions. Like you can see people clicking around on websites, but they're not, you vote with your dollar. And so seeing real data is pretty exciting. And so it's really kind of a great team and a great data set to work with.
Yeah, that's a good point about the work-life balance. I didn't even think about that, but that is something that I learned the hard way in my first job, a little bit. That is important to do other things other than work. But I guess for me, success is doing something you love. So I think that starts with knowing yourself and like knowing what you're interested in and what makes you tick and like what is super exciting. And then it doesn't feel like work. And so I think that, and that seems pretty simple, but it's kind of hard in practice, you know, if you like with whatever norms or, you know, you want to make this salary or you studied this in college, but want to go down a different path. But I think that like, for me, at least, success is being able to go out there and take risks and do something that you love. So I love my job. I love career, my like augmented reality, virtual reality, IoT. I love all of it. So, yeah.
So what do you think is most exciting about your work?
I think it's a topic that, you know, we've kind of talked about already, but being on the cusp of something that it's new and has the potential to make change and a really big impact. So yeah, for me, I'm excited to be a part of seeing where carbon capture is going to go in the future.
I have a similar view. I think the most exciting thing is that it's just always changing and there's always more to learn. And I love learning and I love kind of applying what I've learned. And so it's awesome to be in a field that's just evolving all the time.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I don't have much more to add there.
All right, so has COVID-19 changed your work or the way that you do business? And if so, what has changed? And if not, why has your work been able to stay the same?
So how I do business has stayed the same. The work itself hasn't changed, but how I do business has changed. Before would go into the building in the morning and leave at night. Today I've been working from home since I think early April. Fortunately, most of our projects have been in kind of a design engineering phase, so we haven't had to be on site at those places where we're implementing it. It's just been a lot of communication, team calls, data analysis in the background. So that scope hasn't changed. But honestly, it was just kind of if it was going to happen regarding the projects that we're working on, it happened at a time that it didn't make a huge impact.
So from a day-to-day standpoint, pretty much nothing changed other than I work from home instead of the office now. But a lot of my coworkers are throughout the country or in other countries. And so it's not like I was used to seeing everybody in the office every day anyways. I do miss kind of like coffee or lunch with some of my coworkers, but for like project work, nothing really changed. I think one thing that did change though is obviously COVID had a huge impact on the economy and we're looking at transaction data. So it's a lot of economic data. You can see like, oh, grocery stores had way more transactions than normal and airlines had way fewer transactions than normal. And so it's caused a big kind of open question mark going back to our not knowing all the answers and how you analyze the data. You can't really look at year over year trends and expect normal results when this year has been so different than the ones in the past. We have models that predict like are you a millennial or not? Are you like, what kind of income bracket do we think you are based on your spend patterns? But everyone's spend patterns changed because of COVID. And so we have to answer a lot of questions around, are those models still performing well, or like what might have changed? And so it's really kind of impacted how we do our analysis, because kind of our underlying data that's leading to all those analyses has changed a lot.
Yeah, and I guess for me, I think it's changed the way people learn. It's changed the way people work. It's changed everything in terms of the execution. As a software engineer, a lot of what I do is on my laptop. So I was already sort of doing a hybrid. If I work from home some days, work in the office other days. I think one interesting implication of COVID has been the blurred line between work and home, right? You can see I'm talking now with my bed. It's actually my roommate's bed in the background. And that would have been like so bizarre, right? Before 2020. And so I think that has allowed a lot of coworkers I've noticed to open up a little more and have a little more comfort. They'll ask about something that's in the background of someone's Zoom or something like that, which I found kind of interesting. But like Kathleen said, I definitely think that this style of execution, you miss some of the innately human aspects. So the water cooler conversations, just the passing, oh, hey, how are you doing? Right. And for me, I've always been someone like my coworkers are my friends. And so I guess I'm probably a little more lonely. I don't know. I mean, and I think it depends on the person too, but I can imagine that's a huge challenge with the remote learning too, like in high school. I can't imagine.
Looking back, what advice would you have given your younger self as you were first starting your career?
Let's see. So when I first started, I think I had a little bit of a quarter life crisis transitioning out of college into the real world. I mean, you go from high school, you're surrounded by your peers. Obviously, it's very challenging. Right, but you have people your own age, activities that are provided for you, very similar in college, and then you cross that threshold to employment, and there's a large age variety in people that you're working with. You might not have the same interests or have opportunities to do activities that you like, depending where you're living. I mean, I'm in the middle of cornfields in Illinois, right? So there was a challenge there. So I think I would tell my younger self, and it was hard, but just to grit through it, because my first job wasn't a perfect fit for me. And I wasn't appreciating where I lived. It wasn't the perfect place. But by, again, taking everything I could to learn from it and feel like I'm my best self in that job helped me get to where I am today. So be okay with bumps in the road, I guess is what I would tell my younger self.
So I was thinking about what I would give as advice. And I think the biggest thing is mostly just to believe in yourself a little bit more and not think that, oh, I'm not good at this, so I'm not going to try. Because a lot of success, both in kind of my college career and afterwards, is more from like hard work than like innate talent at one subject or another. And kind of something you don't realize until you give yourself a shot is that things are not usually as intimidating once you get going as they kind of seem ahead of time, whether that's like signing up for a class you think is interesting, but you're like, oh, I'm not good at that, or kind of applying for a job where you're like, I don't know if I'm quite qualified for this. Usually you're a lot more prepared and capable than you give yourself credit for, as long as you kind of just learn, keep learning, and kind of just going for it and working hard.
Yeah, that's great advice all around. I would say well, both of those things firstly. And then thirdly, I guess, would be that to find like a mentor or find someone older or someone, more than one person. You have mentors for all different parts of your life. If there's someone, and use your academy network. I mean, I am very much doing, like, in high school, actually, one of my best friends' older sisters was going to be a senior at Cornell and I was going to be a freshman. And I sat down and I went to the North Star in Easton, actually. I don't know if it's still there. But, and like, she told me about, I explained what I was interested in, and I was a little bit weary about whether I wanted to do engineering, but I decided to apply, and I could always transfer into something else. But I explained everything to her, and she was like, you should check out this major, operations research and information engineering. And I checked it out. I did a course, and then I loved it. And I'm very much pursuing a career that is based off of that. But that was just a conversation I had using my academy network. And she gave me some great advice, and she's still a mentor to me, and as well as other people, both in your academy network and as you move on in college. And I guess I'd just like to say, like, I am happy to talk to anyone outside of this. If you need advice on really anything, career, college, whatever. And I think that when I was in high school, I was a little bit nervous. I didn't want to be an imposition to anyone, or I maybe like didn't reach out to my teachers as much as I could have. They have great advice. And so I guess I would just say is, like, really start that early, because that's going to help you leaps and bounds moving forward.
Well, thank you guys so much for being here today. And Mrs. Beckett, did we have any other questions? Or
No other questions came in through the chat, but if anyone does have a question, and if you want to take yourself off mute and ask our speakers, feel free to do so.
This is fun for us. Come on.
Oh, good. May I ask a question of what is something that you are doing to nurture the other side of your work life? How are you nurturing your emotional side, your artistic side, all those other facets of what makes you tick?
Yeah. So I'm pretty big into like fitness and outdoor activities. So I'm actually a CrossFit coach as well. So after this, I have to go coach a class. So that community has been, especially during COVID, a huge part. And we have a kind of a mountain bike trail about half an hour away, and have been going trips there a lot. So I think being outdoors and just moving is kind of what nurtures me outside of work.
Same here. Definitely notice my mood improving every time I work out pretty consistently. I think two other things that I've been trying to do. One, again, kind of spend a lot of time outside. I did a hiking trip at a national park this summer, which was pretty awesome, and been just trying to check out all the parks in the local area as well. Just get outside, see some trees, forget that, the rest of the outside world exists. The second, which is kind of a silver lining of COVID, I've found, is after high school, after college, you're still friends with them, but they don't, live in the same place usually. And so you end up spending more time, with the people who are in your city, just because you're like, oh, let's go out to dinner, let's do this. And like, you can't do that if they're not in the same city, but everyone's kind of at home in COVID. And so you can be more intentional and spend the time with the friends you really care the most about. So I've been trying to be more intentional with that and do just a lot of Zoom chats and FaceTimes with my good friends who I don't get to see that often because they don't live in the same city, but it doesn't really matter right now anyways.
So I'm also going to tack on bird watching. A great way to explore and feel connected to your neighborhood. That has been a silver lining.
Stephanie, did you know Cornell has like, what is it, the largest
Lab
bird
ornithology.
sound database in like the nation?
It was actually when I went back for my reunion last summer, they had a tour, and they give you like a pair of binoculars and you're walking
the ornithology lab,
yes.
right? Yeah. I'm very familiar.
Yes, it was great. It's great.
And they send daily emails to you.
Yeah, literally. Like, I'm so up to date with the ornithology lab.
Right.
I definitely, though, like to answer your question, would also say like sports, and I know Stephanie mentioned intramural soccer, and I organize a few intramural teams. I live right by the beach in South Boston, actually. And so there's intramural volleyball. We play a lot of spike ball. I don't know if you've heard of that. But stuff like that. I just think being part of a team for me, I played soccer with Kathleen in high school and then at Cornell as well. And so for me, like being part of a team kind of fuels my emotional energy a little bit. So, yeah.
I definitely feel that too. I guess we haven't played in 6 or 9 months or whatever now, but I play on an intramural soccer team. And then I also play on an intramural flag football team. And it's a great way to have kind of a community outside of work that you see regularly and you get to do something fun and get some exercise in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I also think intramural teams are good if that's something of interest in college too, just as far as like meeting new people outside of maybe your major or your dorm room or whatever.
I have a quick question. So is there any other advice that you would like to give?
College only happens once. Work hard, but also have fun. No, I mean, it can get
I would say high school too.
Yeah.
High school too.
Yeah. No, I mean, you're obviously paying good money to really dive in and learn a lot, right, in the next phase in college. Like I said, afterwards, you get old and you're working and it's less fun. You're not surrounded by, everyone with similar interests or the age group as you. So, going back to like intramurals, just take advantage of activities that are offered to you, experience new things while you're working hard.
I totally agree. Like as Kat was saying, like having mentoring is really valuable, and your network and the people matters a lot when you're like, oh, I'm interested in this job. Hey, I actually know someone who works there. Can they give me a referral? Or I need advice on my resume. Let me ask someone who has a similar job to me. And so taking time to get to know people in college and making really good friendships is just as valuable probably as, learning all the skills.
And kind of piggybacking off of both of those statements is just like raise your hand, right? So even if maybe you don't know if you would be interested in some activity, and that goes both professionally and sort of socially too. Like raise your hand and try something new, and you never know, you might love it. So don't be afraid to sort of lean in.
Awesome. So thank you, Stephanie, Kathleen, and Katarina for being here tonight and introducing us to pursuing education in STEM and the workplace in STEM.
Well, thank you all. And again, thank you to our expert panelists. And you had great insights to share. And again, if you are an attendee on the call, and if you have any questions you'd like to follow up with our panelists with one-on-one, just let me know.